good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone. I'm really happy and thankful to be given this opportunity to be part of this conference today. My colleague and I will be presenting, but he's also here. We will be talking about our organization and the projects that we are currently engaged in. So I am talking about THAPP. THAPP is a not-for-profit organization from Pakistan. It is the only UNESCO-accredited NGO of Pakistan under the Convention of 2003. We're mostly focused on safeguarding and preservation of tangible and intangible cultural heritage throughout the country. But I will be talking about a particular example today, which is very close to my heart and also quite relevant to the topic here. So it's basically about the Kalasha community. Before moving forward, just a very quick, as she told you, I'm an architect, a cultural heritage consultant, and I work in THAPP as a secretary to the Culture Development Program. And I'm also teaching in University, Institute for Art and Culture. My colleague, he's an anthropologist. He is also engaged in the culture development sector of THAPP, teaches in ISE. He has diverse publications, and he graduated in 2014 from University of Aberdeen. Before moving forward, I feel it's very important to give an overview of what the Kalasha community is, who these people are and why what is so important. So the Kalasha community, it's the smallest indigenous community of Pakistan. There are 3,800 left in the world only. Their number is decreasing like anything, and they're facing a number of threats, particularly because, there are a lot of forced conversions. They have threats from the jihadi outfits, religious discrimination. Also, their culture and rituals are looked down by the non-Kalasha communities. And, because of all these particular factors, the youth, they're not really, a lot inclined towards their own culture. Instead, they either by threat or incentives, a lot of them are converting to other religions. So this issue was brought to us, in 2015 when we actually became aware and we wanted to initiate some work in the community. So the main vision has always been, there are three visions that we worked on. First was to strengthen the nexus between culture and sustainable development and safeguarding the Kalasha community's inalienable rights to their culture. The second was to promote national understanding, tolerance, and social cohesion through appreciation of cultural diversity in the country. And third, to promote heritage-based learning in school curriculum. To give you an overview, actually in 2015 when we entered the valleys, we realized that they have a beautiful culture. They have beautiful, their own traditions, practices. Their ICH is very rich. But unfortunately, nothing was noted down, nothing was written down. They had no written language. So, and all of these practices were mostly passed on from, the elders to the young generation. So sometimes when the younger generation was not interested in learning, so a lot was just going on, away with the older generation as they died. So this was a very important step. We realized that it was very important to safeguard both their tangible and intangible heritage. The Kalasha community in the valleys, they are in the northern area of Pakistan. There are three particular valleys in which the people are situated. They are Bamburat, Rambur, and Birir. They are in the Chitral district in the north of Pakistan. This is the sketch that I made for some clarification. So, their religion and their customs, they're basically governed by a basic principle, which is Kalasha Dastur. These people believe everything is divided into Anjasta, pure, and Pragata, impure. So just to give you an idea, all the villages are, they are basically on the same principle. So the highest areas are the altar and the high pastures, which is like extreme Anjasta. So men can only go there. Women cannot because of the association of menstruation with them and childbirth. So they cannot go to the Anjasta areas. dancing areas, temple, and the village where they live, that is an area which is accessible by both men and women. And then as we move down the village, there is a river where women go to take bath, wash their clothes. That's Pragata, accessible by women only. And Bashali, where women go during menstruation and childbirth, they live here. So these are just to give a quick overview of how the landscape is gendered. For landscape for men always appears like this. So these are two highlighted areas where they cannot access. Otherwise, the Bashali and the river. Otherwise, they can pretty much go anywhere. Women, when they're not menstruating or, during childbirth, they cannot go to the high pastures and these areas. Otherwise, they can go where pretty much the other places. And this is the third sketch, which is like, the highlighted areas are places where women cannot go during menstruation and and during childbirth. And men, this is an example. It's a beautiful area. They grow their own crops. They have, a lot of skills. There is beautiful and very rich craft. They go into weaving, sewing, beadwork, embroidery. They have 4 annual festivals, which is like Joshi, Ochao, Chaumas, Full, which is celebrated all through the years. They have dancing, different rituals of drawings, and like Chaumas, which is in December. It's the longest one, which is almost for 22 days. So what happened was when we went in the area, the first project was, how we talked to the community, and through their help and, participation, realized that community-based inventory was one of the most essential things that had to be carried out in the area. So that was started in 2015, of course, with the consultation of the community and their involvement. They were involved at every level, every step. Then this project was continued. So we got this project. This was by the Canadian embassies, and then the second one, in collaboration with UNESCO. This project was to empower the Kalasha community through safeguarding the intangible cultural heritage. And during that time, the government also approached, and in collaboration with UNESCO, we realized that there was an element which is an ICH element, Suri Jagek, which was in the Kalasha community. This is a traditional astronomical method of developing the calendar, and this is how these people observe the sun and the moon, and the sun dictates every activity that's going to happen throughout the year, like, growing crops, rains, when the festivals have to be celebrated, everything. So this was dying out because only the elders knew it. And the community, wanted this to be preserved and safeguarded. So we worked with the community in collaboration with UNESCO, and it was a huge success because this was, sent for the nomination on the UNESCO Earth and Safeguarding list, and the nomination was inscribed. So this is the first independent element from Pakistan which is inscribed on the UNESCO Earth and Safeguarding list, and that is from this community. So throughout this time, from 2015 to 2018 and 17, some of the achievements that we had were we had a joint publication, UNESCO THAPP joint publication on the Kalasha culture. We had different topics that we were trying to explain, their culture in detail. 20 personnel from the local community, they were trained in community-based inventory directly through community, capacity building workshops, and they got to know how, they're going to, work on more. A total of 13 persons have been trained from academia, NGOs, and tourism departments through capacity building workshops. A total of 45 personnel from across the 3 valleys, they were involved in these inventorying process. For example, they were giving interviews, they were involved, and also it was a huge thing for all of us that 45 elements, they have been inventoried and also adopted by the government of Pakistan of the Kalasha community. So while doing all this, so this is just an image of the publication that we had in 2019. And while we worked on all of this, a very recent project that I'm going to talk about is this project, which was like strengthening the resilience of the Kalasha community through protecting and promoting their cultural heritage. And through this, basic intention was to initiate and to realize how we can have, education, introduce culture into education. So one of the problems in the valleys is that there was only one school which was dedicated to only the Kalasha students and Kalasha teachers. Otherwise, there were all the government schools. And when something like this happens, there is an issue because you see, the government doesn't, they would, so the Muslims will not be learning about the Kalasha culture. So it was very difficult for them to, teach their students. So we went to the school, particular school, which is a Kalasha Dur, and we talked to the teachers. They were extremely interested because they knew that they could actually start teaching the students about their heritage and, make it part of their curriculum without making it an extra thing. Because that way, it would be very easy to just, gel in and students, basically the youth will know about their heritage. This is to give you an overview. So at the end of the, in 1 year, what we did was, with the help of the teachers, the Kalasha teachers, throughout this, what we did was, we came up with different worksheets and a booklet, which was, for the students of primary school. And what happened was that this was in, so during the length of this project, firstly, there was an acknowledgement, knowledge and resilience. This was all taken into consideration. Secondly, the mediums through which this knowledge was passed on from one generation to the other, that was, really appreciated, and we tried to keep it that way. And third, this traditional knowledge, we realized that this must be structurally made an integral part of the ongoing institutionalized educational structure. There was a bilingual educational material which was written, firstly in the Kalasha language by the teachers and the Kalasha people, and then we came to help them to translate that into English, which was produced for the students. As learning about the Kalasha culture through extracurriculars, this has proved, even in the past, very successful. So what we tried to do was we developed heritage educational worksheets, workbooks, through which students wouldn't feel that, they're doing something extra while learning, actually. So, and also we realized throughout this project that it's very important to return to the title of the project and focus on the word resilience. Resilience is what the Kalasha have shown, to survive in these surroundings for centuries. And this is a need to strengthen their resilience to not merely survive, but also thrive as a community in the future. This is to give you an example. So what we did was, it's just, an overview of one worksheet. So what we did was, like, for example, it's a general science. It was a subject. We took a story, which was a traditional story, how the Kalasha people have found a cure for snake bites. That's through a medicinal plant that they have in the valleys. And there's a story that is told, from the elders to the younger students. So we wrote that story, we made, some figures, and then there were some questions from the story which were related to science, and then students had, they had to do that. So this was part of their science class, and, they were also learning about their heritage, their traditional stories. Another example was how, fox made snow leopard, fall for his, intelligence, and how this was also a traditional story, and we made parts of this English curriculum, and then the story was narrated, and then questions in the end. Similarly for Urdu, so we tried to cover all the subjects that the students were learning and include them. And this was the book that was made. So it had different topics. Goshnik is like initiation ceremony for the for the children. Then Gulparik, what happens when a child is born, from that onward, like, in the lives of a woman and the child till their, till death. So we try to cover their culture in a very easy language, some in interesting way, with a lot of, illustrations that would be very interesting for the students. So through this project, it has been seen that there's regular employment of exclusively Kalasha school teachers in all Kalasha schools. This was very important. This was not being followed. So, some of the outcomes were, and then there was the second point was that use of Kalasha language as the primary medium of instruction in Kalasha schools. Thirdly, offerings and implementing the teaching of the Kalasha language as a subject in all Kalasha schools. Fourthly, we believe that it is important to signify the role of Qazi as inherently connected to the formal education system. So in Kalasha, their culture, Qazi is a person who who has all the knowledge of the practices, and he is supreme. He knows and he teaches. So we try to bring that into education as well. So he would also be part of some lectures and educational systems. So this was all done. However, during COVID-19, things haven't been going really well for the valleys. Yes, over hundreds of, schools have been closed throughout the country, but this impacted nearly half of the world's population, we agree. But indigenous communities the world over, they have suffered from disproportionately high level of disruption in education as compared to the other counterparts in the same country. So we talked to the principal, the head, who was leading this Kalasha school, Kalasha Dur. His name is Bakhtavar Shah. And he told us that, they have tried a lot to start a homeschooling initiative, but that's too little avail. There are a number of problems. Firstly, the parents of the children themselves, they're not really equipped with the teaching, to teach the content that is being taught at the school. Secondly, they're like either the parents are unaware of English or Urdu because they just speak in Kalasha language, whereas the students have to be taught in both these languages, at home, in schools. And furthermore, there is a challenge which was highlighted that there is no reliable internet connection in the three valleys. So even though all these people do have mobile phones, but without internet connectivity, in online classes are a big hassle. So however, yes, but some things were also positive which were highlighted. For example, Suri Jagek, which I mentioned earlier also, which was inscribed. Particularly, that's a practice that students have learned from the village elders, and that is only taught because there is a certain space from where the village elders take the the children and teach them where they're supposed to sit and view the sun. So, these are small things that cannot be, that have to be practice-based. So, these are some of the other practices. They are, what the elders are trying to teach the younger generation. Similarly, grain storage as well as narrating folk stories, they are being narrated to students in times where they're away from the school. So this also might be seen as a blessing in disguise to teach, one-to-one and, pass these stories from, one generation to the other. So that's all about it, and thank you for the time.